Tina.
Tweet a photo with that background.
Welcome back to the program. We are live from Geelong RSL this afternoon ahead of tonight's first Sky News People's Forum of the election 2013 year. We're doing it in conjunction with the Herald Sun and the Geelong Advertiser, as you can probably see behind us. That will kick off a little later tonight. So we're throwing a bit of a spotlight on this region this afternoon ahead of all of that. I've been wandering around town this afternoon talking to some of the locals about the issues of concern to them. We'll show you some of their responses and, well, let's put it bluntly, the bad news for Labor and Julia Gillard in terms of those responses a little later. But first of all, let's bring in our panel. We're joined by one of the local MPs here in Geelong, the member for Corio, Richard Marles, and also, I guess, probably the closest Liberal MP to this area, perhaps, Josh Frydenberg. You seats in Melbourne, but you don't have any Liberals in this part of the world just yet.
Well, that hopefully will change, David and Richard, on September the 14th.
We will see. Well, this seat that we're in at the moment actually is Corangamite, and this is the most marginal electorate in the country. I think the margin right now is 0.3% after a redistribution, so it's really just a handful of votes. Now, I've got to say, the people I spoke to here today, the one issue that came through loudest was jobs. Concerns about unemployment, concerns about what's happening in the car industry. The big Ford plant here is a strong employer, and also the Shell refinery, which Shell is trying to sell at the moment. And the other big employer, of course, is the Alcoa smelter as well. These is a strong manufacturing heartland, and people are very worried about the jobs that have already been lost and jobs that could be lost in the future. So, Richard Marles, what can Labor do to address these concerns? You've been in government 6 years and people are still very nervous.
Well, this is an area where there is a clear differentiation between us and the opposition, and you're right that it is the area of concern, and not surprisingly, we are in a sense at on the front line of the effect of the Australian dollar. We're feeling the effects of the global economic crisis here in Geelong, and you mentioned the three major multinationals who are here in Shell, Ford and Alcoa have all had significant challenges. But in terms of what we've been doing, we've been supporting each of those employers. We supported Alcoa to the tune of $40 million this time last year to keep them going through the review that they're going to have next year. We've been supporting Ford, and that's what we're doing in terms of the specific right now. Across the manufacturing industry, we announced a $1 billion plan for jobs in manufacturing, where we were setting up industry precincts, and we're very hopeful here that we might be able to get one of those. But we've also got a plan for future manufacturing, high-tech manufacturing. We've put $37 million into a research furnace, carbon fibre research furnace at Deakin University. Carbon Revolution makes carbon fibre wheels for cars. There's some hopes that we might have a couple of hundred people working there just within a year. So that's high-tech manufacturing, and we're investing in the future. But can I make this point, David? Tony Abbott comes here tonight to a car town with the proposition of cutting $500 million out of the car industry. That's what he says he's going to do. In all truth, he'll probably cut a couple of $1 billion out of it.
He's saying he'll review...
The answer is, what is he doing that?
He's saying he'll review the industry assistance.
Review it down, though. He's made it very clear that money is going to be leaving. He's not putting any money in.
OK, let's address this. Josh Frydenberg, what is the coalition going to do to the car industry?
Well, firstly, can I say you're absolutely right, David, to say that the people of Corangamite and Corio have lost confidence in this government. In fact, Richard Marles, because Richard Marles has actually lost confidence in the Prime Minister too, because he recently resigned. But at the end of the day, it does come down to jobs, and people are feeling very insecure. Now, just 8 months ago, I mean, the Prime Minister came to the Ford plant and promised $34 million to create more than 300 new jobs. None of those jobs eventuated. In fact, we've just learned that more than 300 jobs have been lost from Ford. Now, we are going to contribute $1 billion to the car industry, and we're more than that. We're actually going to work with the car industry to get an effective export plan, because that's what Tony Abbott has said. He said we need to create new markets for the car industry. We've got to actually help sell these cars not only domestically but internationally, and we're going to do a product...
How do you create new markets? Is that really within the Australian government's power to create a new market somewhere for a
It's absolutely within the Australian government's power to work with the company, to work with Austrade, to work with other areas in order to say, well, hang on, we've got a great product here, where can we export to? And also
so let's take this practically. You go to Ford and you say you're making a good car, it's a territory. We're going to help you sell this to, what's a new market? Middle East?
Middle East, let's say.
Okay, and how do you do that?
Well, we've got a great footprint in the Middle East in terms of our diplomatic presence, and we'll work with them. And, you know, from Tony Abbott down, we'll get senior ministers involved in actually trying to create jobs here in Australia for our export market. The other thing we'll do is we'll get the Productivity Commission, which is very effective in this area, to conduct a review of these handouts. Because, you know, Richard keeps pointing to a sack of money that's being given to the car industry as that being the answer. It hasn't been the answer.
Yeah, but
I mean, they've lost jobs. So we
I just want to get beyond the usual party lines on this and talk practically. So if you want to sell a Ford Territory
into a new
market,
market,
you then have to convince the Ford company, which is based in the United States, to make left-hand drive vehicles here. Is that right?
No, we actually sell already cars into Asia, and we sell cars into the Middle East and elsewhere. So we actually can do that from Australia. I mean, the point is,
so you will convince Ford to do this?
I think we can work with Ford to develop new export markets.
But Ford have said they're not going to do. I mean, this is the whole point. You've actually got to get into the detail of this, David, and you've got to get your head around it if you're actually going to try and make a difference.
But you're not creating jobs. You're not creating jobs.
You've just said, let's export Fords into the Middle East. Fantastic, as though that's a new idea. The simple fact is, for that to occur, we've got to reconfigure the plant here in Corio so that it can manufacture left-hand drive vehicles. Now, this is a proposition which has already been put to Ford.
So they're not up for it.
They're not up for it.
So but here's the other point.
Here's the other point. If you were going to get them up for it, you would need money to do it, and your proposition is to take $500 million out of car industry
So where is your
support.
$1.5 billion going, Richard? Where are you going to do better than you've done for the last 6 years?
No, we've been supporting Ford in the development of the EcoBoost engine. Ford are here through till 2016. They're here.
Announced 330 jobs.
They're here through till 2016 because of the support that we are providing and the partnership that we have.
Richard, let me ask you this: we hear car companies say this all the time. We're here for the long haul, and then suddenly they announce hundreds of jobs gone. Is it really now time to bite the bullet and question whether this government money being pumped into car makers is worthwhile at all?
Well, that is a question which is a very live question within the Liberal Party shadow cabinet.
Shouldn't it be for all of us?
Our answer to that question is simply this. If we're going to make things in this country, we need to be at the highest end of manufacture. We need to be making the highest tech manufacturing products that we can. The highest tech manufacturing that we do in this country today is making cars. Making cars and stopping to make cars is not just about jobs. It's about removing industry capability.
So we should always make cars. Why?
Because if we don't make cars in this country, we're dumbing down our manufacturing, and that's exactly the wrong way to go. The simple fact is this. If this mob get elected, they will cut billions of dollars from car industry support. If the car industry goes, then Australian manufacturing is down for the count. It's down for the count because our highest tech manufacturing that we do in this country today will no longer
David,
exist.
can I just make the point here that the carbon tax is increasing the cost of every vehicle manufactured
No one
in Australia
is saying the carbon tax has got anything to do with
this. Well,
hang
on. It's a fact.
$400
the
car companies aren't saying
is
this
the increase in cost. Well, actually, if you lift the cost of making a car, it's going to make it more difficult to sell it.
The issue here is the Australian dollar. The issue here is the Australian dollar and the global economy.
Well, I'm talking about things that you control.
I think the amount it contributes is debatable, but it is a cost factor, the carbon tax, and it's so much higher than the European prices we've now seen, or any price that's coming out of China in the next few years. It's an incredibly high price.
Well, OK, if we're going to have the carbon price conversation...
yes, let's have it.
Well, the opposition spent...
Let me ask about the government. Do you support, as a disgruntled member of the government, let's put it...
Oh, I'm not running with that idea. I'm not disgruntled at all, David.
Well, you were disgruntled over the leadership not so long ago. Do you support the carbon price being $23 a tonne right now, climbing up to $29 in 2015?
What I support is... Do
you support that?
I support the carbon price becoming a floating mechanism in the time that we've said. I do support providing a sense of security and predictability to companies in the short term, so they know how much it's going to cost. If I can finish, and what I absolutely support is that we plug ourselves into the European emissions trading system, so that we do have a floating price going into the future. Look, this is a policy about decades worth of change.
About politics.
It's about decades worth of change. The exact price in this year, as we move from a fixed price into a floating price, is not the main game. The main game is that we're establishing a price on carbon and we are building ourselves into a global trading system. That's what we need to do. And the idea that anything that we're talking about now in terms of jobs in Geelong is a function of that is completely ridiculous, and there's not a company who says that it is.
David, this has been highly embarrassing for the government because 30% fall in the carbon price out of Europe. So now Australians are going to be paying more than 550% more per tonne of carbon than their European counterparts, and increasing to $37 a tonne by 2020 and more over time.
But it's going to be a floating price in 2020.
Well, that's what your Treasury modelling says.
We haven't even got to the National Broadband Network, School Kids Bonus, any of these things. We're out of time, so we could obviously keep going on this for a long time. But appreciate you both coming.
Well, we've got great candidates in Sarah Henderson and Peter Reid. So
you managed to squeeze those in.
Well done, brother.
A few seconds. Thanks, Josh Frydenberg and Richard Miles. Good to talk to you both.
Good to be with you.
We'll be back right after the break with more from Geelong. Stay with us.